Hello and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. In today's video I'm going to be using these picture frame moulds from Let's Resin in an unexpected way to make 3 very simple projects. I will be making some very posh resin garden tags for my herb garden. I will also make some resin greetings cards and some resin fridge magnets. And after I've done all of that, I will give you the details on how you can get yourself some free resin from Let's Resin. They're giving away 20 lots of epoxy and UV resin to my UK viewers. So if you're interested in claiming some free resin, stay tuned and I'll tell you more about that at the end. So if all of that sounds interesting, stay tuned and enjoy the video. Right, before we get started, I just want to mention something really quickly because it's important. Whenever I do a giveaway, and there's giveaway in the title, there's always scammers that come along to the comments section and start telling my viewers that they've won, and they even use my name. If that happens to you, if you leave a comment, ignore it. I won't be telling anybody they've won resin in the comments. It's going to be done differently this time. So please just ignore any of that. Right, on with the project. Here are my 2 moulds which come in a set from Let's Resin, and you might have seen me use them before. With the rectangular one I made this picture frame, and with the heart-shaped one this is the picture I made using an old photo of my dad. So those are in previous videos. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, but how are you going to make garden tags and fridge magnets with those big moulds? Well, the secret lies behind them. Lots of silicone moulds now have these support systems on the back, and this one's like a grid with 4 perfect rectangles, and when I looked at it I thought, yes, I can definitely make some things with that. So yeah, that's the main one I'm going to be using today. I did do something with the heart one as well, but not so much. This is the main one. This might not actually be too much of a secret to you because a couple of years ago I did do a similar video using some different moulds, so I have discussed this in the past, but yeah, I thought I'd revisit it because it's fun to explore the backs of the moulds and see what you can make with them, isn't it? So we're going to start with the garden tags. And what you can see me doing here is measuring and cutting some thick cardboard, which I'm going to use to pack the right side of the mould so that there's support on the right side. If that makes any sense, you'll see soon what I mean anyway. I needed 3 pieces to get the right thickness to fill the correct side of the mould so that when I fill the back side of the mould it won't sag. You'll see in a minute. So here we go, it just pops into the front side of the mould, and it will just, once there's 3 pieces in there, it will give it enough support to make it nice and stable when I'm filling the other side. So I've fast forwarded past that because I'm sure you've got the gist of it. And what I'm going to be using to make my garden labels is my seed packets. And you can see that they're a little bit worse for wear. So yeah, I needed to use my imagination a little bit with some of them, but I wanted to use the pictures from the front of the packets because I thought they were really good. And I'm using the wording from the packets too. And then on the back, I'm going to be putting the instructions for the planting of the seeds and all of that. That's going to be in there too. So all the information will be on the back of the labels. First of all, I'm cutting a rectangle of thick white paper, just a bit smaller than the size of the rectangle in the mould. I need space around the edges because I'm going to be laminating these. And whenever you're laminating, you need to make sure you leave a margin of clear laminate around the edges so it's completely sealed and the resin can't leak in. So once I had that paper ready, it was time to dismantle the seed packet, and I just sliced it with my craft knife along the edges so that I could keep the front and the back and use them both. I didn't want to damage the front or the back, so that's why I'm just slicing carefully along the edges. Then I just sliced off the name label, which I'll be using, and then I cut the picture to size as well. Now obviously you're not going to have the same seed packets as me, so I'm not going to give you too many instructions because you probably have something completely different. Most of the time they have photographs on, and that will look really good as well. But yeah, it was just a case of cutting everything to size and then sticking it onto the white paper that I've already cut to the right size. And I did the same with the instructions from the back of the packet and stuck those on the back of my label. And because it was looking a little bit plain, I took a gold chrome marker from Let's Resin and drew some gold lines around the edge, and that really brought it back to life. So that was nice and straightforward, wasn't it? For some of the packets, they were damaged, and like for this one I didn't have a full picture either. So what I decided to do was use coloured paper instead of white paper, and this time I tore the picture out and I tore the wording out to give it a more rustic effect, and I actually liked those ones better. They did look a lot better, but you learn as you go along, don't you? You see what looks good, and yeah, they were all good, but I did like the torn ones best. So I think I've shown you enough of that for you to get the idea, and I've got lots of other things to show you today, so let's move on to the laminating. So here you can see me arranging all 4 labels on one half of my laminating pouch, making sure to leave space between each one so I can get a good margin when I cut them out later on. I'm only using half of the laminating pouch, so I'm going to cut through half of it and save the other half for later. I'm going to use the other half for my fridge magnets, so we don't want to waste things, do we? Once that was in the pouch, it was just a case of putting it through the laminating machine. It's just a cheap machine that I've had for years. You don't need anything fancy, but they're a good thing to have in your craft room, that's for sure. Right then, there's one problem that you might come across whenever you're laminating something thick, and you do need to pay close attention to it if you're going to be putting your laminate into resin. And this is the problem. Let me just show you. See that big cloudy area there? That's where the rollers haven't been able to squeeze the 2 pieces of laminate together enough for the glue to melt against each other. If that sounds right, I don't know. I think you get me though, don't you? I'm always saying, does that make sense? And people say, yes, it makes sense. But I do always worry. Anyway, because those haven't stuck together properly around those thick edges where I've got the labels, what I decided to do was cut them out and put them through again from the side where it's not stuck quite so well. I thought if I put that side in and that hits the rollers before the paper hits the rollers, it would glue down better. The glue would melt inside the laminate better. So that's what I'm doing there. I'm not going to show you all of that process, but it's just something that you need to be aware of, because once you start cutting close to the card, and if you start cutting into the bit where it's not sealed, that's where the resin will leak in. And this is one of the reasons why I don't use laminates in resin very often, because it can be not quite as simple as people think. Let's jump ahead in time and get my laminated labels into the resin. I've mixed up, I think it was 3 fluid ounces of Let's Resin's Fast Cure resin, which is a bit thicker than normal resin, because, if it's going to be curing fast, it needs to be a thicker resin. All fast cure resins are a bit thicker, so don't panic when you see all those bubbles. That's quite normal, and they do go away after time quite easily by themselves. You can use your heat gun or a spray of alcohol to help it along the way, but these came out really clear, so it wasn't a problem that there were some bubbles in there. So I just added a little bit, enough to cover the surface of the mould to start with, and moved it around around until it was all covered with no gaps. If you find that there's gaps, just add a little bit more resin. But at first, don't add too much resin, just enough to cover the surface of the silicone. Once the surface of the silicone was covered, I just added all my labels and then covered those with the rest of the resin. And then it was just a case of waiting for a few hours for those to cure, and they were ready. And I almost forgot, I still had some clear resin left. So I took some Let's Resin white mica powder, mixed it in with my leftover resin and used the heart-shaped mould, which is from the same set. And I thought, yeah, they'll make those two sections you can see on the right hand side. I thought they'd make good card shapes for the front of a gift card, which you're going to see next. So I thought, yeah, they'll come in handy for the next part of today's video, and that's all I'm doing there, adding a bit of white and pouring it into the mould. So about 5 hours later, they were ready to take out of the mould, and there they are. They look really good, don't they? And I think they'll look really nice in my herb garden. There's the instructions on the back, look. So I'm going to be sticking those onto some wooden sticks in a moment. But yeah, I'm happy with those. And I know it seems a bit extreme for making garden labels, but if you don't want to make something so, luxurious for yourself, they make great gifts for anybody who loves to garden. So there are my labels that you just saw. They're birch wooden garden labels, which my mum got me when I asked her if she'd pick me up some plant labels when she went into town, and she came back with them. And I thought, oh, I only wanted those little plastic cheaper ones. I didn't want the posh ones, so I saved them because I thought they might come in handy. And of course, yes, they did. They've come in handy today. So yeah, I had to decide what I was going to lose on those instructions on the back, because I was going to have to cover them a little bit. So yeah, I only lost a little bit of it and glued them on the back with some E6000 glue. Right, you will see all those a bit more later. Let's get on with the greetings cards. This time I've mixed up my resin again. It's a 1-to-1 mixing ratio, by volume. I didn't want to show you all the mixings. I've got so much to show you in the video. So it's all mixed, and I'm just separating the resin into 2 silicone cups, and I'm going to use my Let's Resin mica powders to colour it. I'm using gold, pink and seashell. So once that was all mixed up, it was just a case of pouring it into the moulds. I didn't want to completely fill the moulds, just a little bit, just like before, because I didn't want my card fronts to be too thick. I'm trying a few different pouring techniques to have some variation in there, but in actual fact, when it came down to it, they all looked very similar. So don't worry too much about how you apply your colours. So when I poured my clear resin into my 2 separate cups, I still had some clear resin left. I didn't use all of it. I thought, yeah, if there's some left over, I've got another idea. And there was some left over. I didn't need all the resin I'd mixed. And so I was thinking of my next project, which is going to be the fridge magnets. And so I took my crystal cluster mould, the smallest one I had, and a sphere mould, and decided to use those to put onto my fridge magnets. I decided to put some pressed flowers into the little sphere mould, and I had a set of pressed flowers from Let's Resin, so that was good. I'm going to be using those in my greetings cards when that layer you've just seen has cured, so you'll see that in a moment. But before I did that, I just added some small bits of flour, and then for the crystal cluster mould, I added some pigment and poured that in. I think what I'm going to have to do though is kind of skip through that, because otherwise we're just not going to have time for everything in the video. Okay, back to the card fronts, and as you can see, they've all cured quite similar. And what I've already done is got some of the flowers out, chosen the ones I've wanted and the foliage that I wanted, and arranged them in one of the sections so that I knew how I wanted them. And then in the section next to it, I added a little bit of UV resin in the areas that I would be needing it, and then pressed the flowers onto the UV resin and cured the flowers into place, and that way I knew they wouldn't float up or move when I added the epoxy resin in the next step. I do apologise for the background noise. It's very warm here today and I've got my windows open, so every time a car goes past you hear it. So yeah, not a lot I can do about that other than sitting in a very hot room and getting really hot. So off camera, I repeated the process for all the other ones, including the white ones I poured in the heart earlier. I had to take one of them out of the heart and do it out of the mould because it needed flipping over, because it's going to be a card and it would have been in the wrong direction if I'd done it in the mould. So yeah, that one you can see at the bottom, yeah, I took it out and turned it over. So I'm just adding some more resin so the tops are completely covered, and then that's it really. It's just a case of waiting for those to cure. So the next day, when they were all ready and I'd made some card fronts to fit them, it was ready to put them all together. So there's my card front. I've already put double-sided tape on the front and I'm just peeling off the backing, and then it's just a case of sticking the card front onto the card base, and that's as easy as it is. I didn't think you would really want to see me making all the card bases. It's very simple really, isn't it? You don't really need to see me do that. So once that was stuck firmly into place, I decided to give it a little bit more interest with some of the chrome marker that I used before from Let's Resin. I do love Let's Resin's chrome markers, and I just used a little bit around the edge on this one. I thought this one was already really pretty as it was, and I didn't colour in the sides on this one, but on some of the others I did colour the sides, so you can get to see which you prefer. But yeah, I like it both ways. So here's the other ones all finished, and I really do like them. I know they're really tiny, but it's nice to have tiny cards to give to someone, even if it's just someone's feeling a bit poorly and you just want to tell them you love them or you hope they feel better soon. And yeah, just like giving them a note, isn't it? And it's something special. Because it's so small, they can keep it in the bag or the pocket or whatever. And just to remind them that you love them. And yeah, I quite like the idea of them being so tiny. So yeah, I'm happy with those. Let's get on to the final project. Right, it's time for the last project, which you'll be pleased to hear is a very quick and simple one, because I seem to have been talking for hours now. So anyway, I've got my magnets there, because they're going to be fridge magnets. I'm putting one on the front and then keeping it in place with another one on the back. And that way it won't move around when I'm adding the resin. So for the resin, I'm using the same one as before, the Fast Cure one from Let's Resin, and this time I'm keeping it clear, but I've added some of the gold flakes from Let's Resin. I think they came with the flower set. So yeah, I just added gold flakes into the resin, gave it a good stir and poured it into the mould. The reason I added the gold flakes is because the backgrounds that I've made and laminated, which are going in there, have quite a big gap. I've made them a bit too small, so I needed some interest around the edges, and that's why I went for the gold leaf. So later that day, while the resin was still tacky, I decided to put my backgrounds on there so that they would stick in position, and I did that off camera, but yeah, it did work really well. It kept them there and it made the next step easier. So these are the bits I made with my leftovers earlier on, with the flowers in the sphere mould and the crystal cluster, and I'm just going to stick them on the front of the backgrounds that I made and then add the clear resin. But that sphere turned out quite nice, didn't it? The flower was hard to get through, the little hole in the mould. I had to kind of fold it in half to get it in. But yeah, they've turned out okay, and it was a way of using my leftover resin. So as you can see, I'm using hot melt glue to add them to the background. And I thought it was a bit of a crazy idea, adding that sphere to the middle of a flower, but I think it kind of works. I haven't really mentioned the backgrounds much. What I did was I made them on Canva. I've got the Canva app, which I love. I make all my video thumbnails on there and a lot of my social media posts on Canva. So it's really good. Yeah, and just printed them out. So that was nice and easy. And then I laminated them as well. So, yeah. So once they were in, it was just a case of adding the clear resin and then they were done. And so by now you're probably wanting to know how you can get your hands on some free resin from Let's Resin. So let me tell you about that now. My contact from Let's Resin contacted me a couple of days ago, and she was saying that they've got quite a lot of resin in their UK warehouse, which is coming to the end of its, use by date. They all have a shelf life and they've got to sell them before they get too close to that date. The thing is, it's still fine. It's fine to use. I've got resin which I've had way longer than the use by date, and it's no problem to use at all. So it's still really brilliant. And they've also got some UV resin kits, which are, the same thing. They need to get rid of them, but they can't sell them because of the date on them. So she asked me if I would like to give them away to my viewers. There are 20 altogether that they're giving away. So if you're lucky enough to be the ones, you will get some epoxy resin and some UV resin, I believe. I hope I've got that right. But yeah, I'm sure she said that you'll get both. So now I can hear you shouting at your screens saying, Lou, stop waffling. Tell us how we can get our resin. Oh, okay. I'm going to tell you. Be patient. All you have to do is go to the video description and find my email address, which will be fairly close to the top. You won't have to look far. Send me an email with your name and your postal address. And in the email, if you could just write a sentence or 2 sentences, whatever you like, just explaining what you like about my videos so that I know that you're a genuine viewer and not a robot or someone just trying to claim free resin who's never even watched my videos. I'd like it to go to my real viewers. 1 entry per person, please, and you must be in the UK. I will not notify you of anything in the comments, so ignore that, remember. If someone says you've won something in the comments, ignore it. I will reply to the first 20 emails so that you know that you will be receiving the resin. After I have received 20 addresses, I will alter the title to this video and put giveaway closed in the title. So please check that if you're watching now. If it says it's closed, please don't send me an email. And if you're concerned about giving me your name and address, don't worry, it's not going on any mailing list or anything like that. It's only so that I can send it to Let's Resin and they can send you your resin. So now everything's finished and you can have a good look, and I'm hoping it's inspired you to get all your moulds out and have a look at the shapes you've got on the backs of your moulds and then go and make something with them. Use your imagination because it's so much fun to think outside the box. Links and discount codes for the products I've used today from Let's Resin will be in the video description. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to, and I will see you again next week. Good luck with the competition and bye for now.